Greetings and good afternoon, everybody. Is Jacobs, Member of Parliament here. I wanted just to share some ideas and the concept notes on expanding economic opportunities, and it's emanating from a discussion I had over the Easter weekend, and it's something that we've begun to discuss quite significantly. So over the Easter weekend, I was invited to a packed church business breakfast in Nyanga by pastors Tlantla and Oliswa Nkala. It was an honor and privilege to share a platform with really great entrepreneurs like Tandi, Limani, Akona, and which shared their inspirational stories of courage and perseverance. Overarchingly, the big issues that was raised in that meeting was access to finance, access to markets, and building the bridge between the formal and the informal economy. And also, how do we revitalize the township, local, and the circular economy was some of the recurring themes. I was invited by the Shadow Minister of the ANC for the Western Cape for Economics, Honourable Member Nomin Kontlo. And it got me thinking, and I'm sharing some of the ideas. Look, we all know that the economic landscape of the Western Cape, especially in Cape Town, is really skewed, and growing disparities between formal and informal economies. You just have to look at the economy of, say, the CBD of City of Cape Town and drive to any of the 30 km away from any of the suburbs or townships, whether it's Athlone, whether it's Kailicha, whether it's Mitchells Plain, whether it's Nyanga. You see the growing informality and the great economic divide. And so I argue that something has got to give around this. And so we have in the Western Cape quite a functional, quite a diverse economy. Mainly our sectors are agriculture, financial, manufacturing, film, tourism, and the service sector. We have a great climate, a vibrant tourism. We are known for our fruit and wine exports. But I think by and large, after 30 years, the apartheid economic spatial planning has not changed, and the economic ownership still is in the hands of a few. And that has a racial composition. It's mainly in the hands of a few concentrated companies, but also mainly with white ownership. So we require urgent intervention, and even though government has done quite significant, we need a big shift for this. I think if we look at the informal sector and the businesses that it comprises, it's mainly your go-go's that sell on the street, street vendors, small retailers, artisans, service providers, and they typically work outside the informal regulatory framework. They're not registered. Their businesses are not bankable. They're not complying with the regulations, the bylaws, and all of those things. 10% of employment of total jobs is sourced by the informal sector. So this is a very important sector for employment. And because the difficulty or access to get jobs in the formal sector, because of lack of skills, education, experience, many people see the informal sector as also a very viable way to survive and to thrive. We can't say for sure what's the size and measurement of the economic impact of the informal sector, but it plays a significant contribution in the overall job creation, income generation, and consumption. And the challenges that the informal sector faces quite big. The big one is access to finance, inadequate infrastructure, and lack of training, skills development, and support. And also they're quite subject to harassment and exploitation through no formal recognition and protection. We see in the case where the city bylaws and the Metro Police harasses informal traders, whether it's on the parade, whether it's in Gatesville, whether they're in Mitchell's Plain. And in some of these spaces like Town Centre, the infrastructure doesn't lend itself for a vibrant economic opportunities. The place remains dirty, filthy, and don't have basic amenities and facilities. I think there has been a recognition by both the Western Cape government and city to recognize the importance of informal sector and the growth around this. And they claim and they see how we're looking at business support, training, infrastructure improvements. Sadly, this has a limited impact and requires more focused attention, resources, and effort beyond the lip service that's happening there. Now, I've reviewed both the economic plans of the Western Cape and the Gauteng provincial government, and we believe that inclusive and shared growth can be achieved by looking at the potential of both the township economy, the local economy, and the circular economy. And these, hopefully, if we can integrate them in our plans, it can foster economic opportunities in the region and also address the issues of unemployment, inequality of income, and also social inclusion. So here is some concrete practical suggestions that I outlined that will require collaboration, political will and partnership, and resource mobilization within communities, businesses, townships, big retail, multinational companies, conglomerates, government, whether it's small, city, provincial, and national government. I think the first thing is obviously capacity building. We need to have intensive capacity building, and this is where we need to look at vocational, township-based vocational training, partnership models with local institutions like the FET, the universities, and also colleges and community colleges. We need to ensure that entrepreneurial curriculum development and course offerings. We need to look at training, targeted skills training for high potential sectors like agri-processing, renewable energy, and tourism. We need to look at the mentorship program of established businesses or retiree business leaders that's willing to spend hours or few hours a day to help and guide and support emerging, budding entrepreneurs. We need to identify experienced mentors and structure duration mentorship engagement. Obviously, the networking events and knowledge sharing will foster peer learning and collaboration. I think the second one, which is access to finance. Our banks, if you come in here, the banks, corporate banks have literally failed to create affordable finance, and therefore we need an alternative microfinance institution. Models for community-based cooperative financial institutions, credit programs tailored to informal businesses, including microloans, group loans, and asset financing. I think capacity building for microfinance in the areas of risks management, financial management, and client outreach. We need a Western Cape Socio-Economic Investment Fund. We need to look at the structure and governance of this, include the roles and responsibility, and getting partnership between government and private sector, looking at investment criteria of this portfolio, focusing on high potential informal businesses, monitoring and evaluation the performance fund. So access to finance is the big challenge, and we need to think through how we organize, how we mobilize, how do we crowd in the money that we get from national government, public sector, private sector, philanthropy, entrepreneurs, to ensure that we get development finance. Maybe we must also speak to the banks, the Banking Association of South Africa, and see if the big banks don't want to support the micro and informal sector, how they can provide a fund to help those existing like Pakamani or SEEF or microfinance institutes that's really doing well, if we can crowd in some capital funding for them to look at innovation funding solutions. I think the big challenge also here is we need to look at the East African model like Kenya for cooperatives and innovative fintech solutions around this. I think the third issue is infrastructure. We see there's no confidence in our townships on the Western Cape. Your roads in suburbs are squeaky clean and there's no potholes. But in our more than almost 100 and more than 140 informal settlements in the city of Cape Town, you still have third world infrastructure. You still have sewage, drainage, raw sewage in the roads. You have potholes. You have poor street lighting. You have no basic infrastructure, let alone for businesses. So we need to look at infrastructure township upgrades. We want to understand why is the budget of the city and the province skewed. So where there is biggest need, you have the least amount of budget. Whilst 50% of the Cape Town population stays in two big suburbs like Mitchells Plain and Khayelitsha, less than 20% of the budgets are spent in that geographical area, whilst most of it is spent in leafy suburbs. And I think that perpetuates and continued apartheid economic growth. So we must have confidence in this. We need to look at the assessing of the infrastructure gaps and prioritize projects. We need to strategize around transport, sanitation, water supplies to townships, develop markets and shared workplace for informal businesses, including design, construction, and management. And we need to create business hubs in strategic township locations. Selection of these locations with our local authorities is important so that we can create shared space services such as internet access, meeting room, business development, promotion of collaboration between formal and informal business with different hubs. Gauteng has recently adopted the Economic Township Bill Act, which stimulates the growth of townships, reduce poverty and transform townships, and creating sustainable communities for overall growth. Some of these aspects which they focus on is improve the township infrastructure, transport, utilities, internet connectivity, attract investments, and conducive environments for business growth. Provide support, training, mentorship, financial support. Local procurement is a big thing. Encourage all government, ensure compliance with all government and big private sector to source goods and local services from township suppliers, thereby boosting local economy, creating access to finance, and also facilitating affordable loans, services, grants to township business. Skills development is something that we've already covered, and also access to service finance. We're seeing now that they are engaging with township residents and stakeholders in planning developmental projects to ensure the needs and priorities are taken care of. Spatial integration, this is where mixed use is encouraged, integrate residential, commercial, and industrial activities, also improving access to job opportunities and reducing the need for long commuting. We need to foster this collaboration between government agents, private sector, community organization to leverage resources and expertise, and also the social capital that is existing in the townships. There is a strong focus on M&E so that we monitor the impact of our policy and ensure effectiveness and rapid learning, iterative learning. The economic plan identifies 10 high growth areas, and these are energy with new technologies and diverse energy mix, logistics and transportation, ICT and digital services, especially with boom with the gig economy. There's a strong focus on township data centers. The next one is tourism and hospitality, food, beverage, agri-process and construction and agri-processing, financial services, as well as cultural, creative industry, and the industrial cannabis. So those are the 10 sectors. I think what we can do in the Western Cape without being arrogant or complacent, I think there's some useful lessons for us to analyze, review, and hopefully adopt some of these Gauteng models, such as inclusive procurement, tax incentives for companies. So inclusive procurement, here in the Western Cape, we don't have a local content We don't have historically disadvantaged content in both the procurement of the city and in the provincial government, which is really drawing a middle finger to historically disadvantaged Black communities, which include African colored and Indians. So there's no quota system here. Government, you'll see the president starting to talk about tax incentives for companies that take on young entrepreneurs, whether graduates or learnerships or interns, to incentivize employment and as well as subsidize salary payments. We need to look at land use regulation and modify mix to suit the Western Cape context, including and considering regional priorities as well as very important community and stakeholder feedback. We need to cut out the red tape and simplify trade and business permit, municipal bylaws, and strengthen enforcement to ensure compliance with labor relations and regulations. Here, I think the big challenge is that many informality, whether it's the foreign nationals that are not registered, we need to get compliance. We need to ensure that businesses are registered, but where bylaws is in place, bylaws are not meant to be punitive, are not meant to discourage or criminalize the poor trying to make an honest living, but rather enable them through easy access, through making it affordable and making it easy. I think the big challenge, we all know that we see a lot of the townships affected by extortion and criminal networks running rampant, where we need business against crime forums, not only in the CBD and improvement districts, not only in the CBD, but actually in townships and all of our economic nodes, to stop the kidnapping and stop the extortion. I think once business stand together with communities and say no to corruption, no to extortion, no to bribery, but yes to opportunities, yes to ensuring that everybody is getting an opportunity, then we can turn the tide on the criminal activity. Let's empower businesses and entrepreneurs, improving the infrastructure. We need to create tax and other incentives for businesses. I spoke about the president's youth employment services, which is the YES program. Then obviously we need to look at creating awareness, and part of this series is to look at creating awareness. Let's develop communication campaigns and also look at how we integrate. We encourage big business. It makes business sense for them to integrate with informal economies, and also look at success stories of this best practice and organize workshops, seminars, and webinars to help share information. I think there's a lot of growth in sharing and creating inclusive, because it's a win-win for everybody. We're also calling on both our city and provincial government must have enterprise development scheme and procurement policies that favor inclusive value chains, including local content requirement, preferred treatment for business working informal circle suppliers, local is liquor, and to ensure broad economic participation, we need to comply for local procurement. We used to have a 40% broad-based Black economic empowerment procurement policy. We're asking for the Western Cape also to ensure that this is happening in all of its sectors. We also look at the role of Wexgro, but maybe it's time for the Western Cape to have an economic development agency or council where the mandate must be to extend the bridges, that there's a gap between informal and the informal economy, and serve all economic citizens and not only a few. All of this requires for us to move out of our economic ladders, the them and us, out of our comfort zones, away from the them and us, and stop the blame game. Accept that we need to each other, and by working together, we can achieve, and let's foster more. Let's build these bridges of trust through stakeholder engagement, public-private partnerships, network events, shared platforms, business-to-business matchmaking. We're calling on all business leaders, big and emerging, public servants, communities, and worker leaders, academics. Let's get all hands on deck. Let's build this transparency and accountability while we are embarking on roadshows to advocate the township and circular economy and how it will be implemented. We call on the premier, mayors, and all council, captains of industry, stakeholders, and role players to join us as we're going to host this Township Economy Conference. Let's plan now and act together to create equal opportunities and shared and inclusive growth for everybody. If you find this presentation useful or want to engage or be part of it, what we'll do, we'll create opportunities. Please leave your comments, share, like, and in that way we will create opportunities for us to come together again. Thank you for your kind attention, and hopefully we can engage further. Thank you.